are, and we're live. Okay, hey everybody. I'm Natalie Bencivenga, and of course, I think you all know Desmond Price from Independent Thought. And we did this earlier in the week, and it was really fun, and it got a good response. People seem to enjoy it, so we're gonna do it again tonight. Yeah, and we've got some really interesting topics to discuss. I'm going to discuss a little bit of stuff that's happening on my Substack today. And Desmond, you're pulling from some notes. So let's mix this up a little. Let's talk about one of your notes that caught fire. Then we'll talk about my Substack, and then we'll go back to you.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I think one of the first things that I saw that people were really taking interested in was the the fact that the government of Poland is calling for boycotts of Elon Musk's Elon Musk Tesla car company, and this could cost Tesla hundreds of millions of dollars. And for me, it's something that I just personally love because Elon Musk it's not just Elon Musk going through our government rating offices like Social Security Office or trying to fire people who are doing nuclear site testing, or firing people who are doing cancer research for children, or just doing all the different legal things that Elon Musk is doing. But in a small way, it's kind of also Americans pushing back against the fact that there's like a billionaire kind of takeover of our government now. He's essentially is the forward face of what is a larger problem, which is the fact that there are very rich and powerful people in our country who have access to our government. And it feels so often like we have no control over it. Like we have no really pushing back against it. So in a way, it feels like we're able to kind of combat this really larger problem by attacking Elon directly. And what also gives me a little bit of hope is seeing the fact that this isn't just happening here in America. This is happening across the world. We're seeing pushback in Australia, in Poland, like mentioned in this note. We're seeing it in the UK, in France, in Germany. So this really is kind of like a global thing happening right now, where we're all kind of focusing on the fact that, like, hey, we don't want you interfering with our elections. We don't want you interfering in our government. And this collective pushback against Elon Musk, who is an avatar for the billionaire class in general, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about it?
Well, it's interesting. I'm looking at people's responses here, and this always just makes people angry, and it gets them fired up, down with the oligarchy from this person, Michelle, and then somebody above her had written, more of this with Tesla. And it warms my cold, dead heart, Desmond, because nothing really unifies people like a villain, like a common enemy, right?
Yeah.
And I think in this case, it's actually being pointed in the right direction. We've seen a common enemy unite people like in 9/11. And I think that went completely in the wrong direction, right? Created a lot of xenophobia, started a war that never needed to be. So in this case, it's really nice to see the anger being pointed in the right direction at Elon Musk, who it's hysterical to me because here's the richest man in the world, living his rich man life, could have just been ahead of Tesla, could have just done these things, and instead decides to insert himself, unnecessarily so, into the process of the United States government and literally make everyone hate him overnight, basically, in a way that they hadn't prior, right? And so what I find fascinating about this is he is the villain we actually really need right now. And so thank you, Elon, for being there when we need you in the ways that we need you, because this has unified not only the right and the left in a lot of ways, but has brought into conversation a larger topic around taxes, wealth distribution, and economic inequities that we've never really discussed in the United States. And so for me, it's not surprising that note of yours caught fire, because this is a global phenomena. But Poland isn't exactly known as the super progressive part of Europe. So I find that even more telling. What do you think?
It's staggering to me that someone like Elon Musk would actually take the position that he's taken. Saw videos of him going to like a conference in Germany, talking ahead of their elections, trying to like advocate for the far right party in Germany. Like he is trying to align himself with right wing politics across the world right now, and I find that hysterical, given the fact that his main vehicle for his wealth is his Tesla stock price.
Yes.
An electric car company who correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the demographic is not people who vote for conservatives who buy
No,
cars. And
no.
so he went and alienated his actual base and tried to then gin up. He's going to now try to gin up what sales from people who have been going on a mission the last several years to talk about how much they hate electric cars.
Yeah.
So his own power as a billionaire comes from this stock that he is tanking in real time. It
Mm-hmm.
makes absolutely no sense to me. And also before, he couldn't have, maybe he could have known, but he obviously did not foresee this was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I just cannot get over the what I find to be just like a disease of wanting more.
Mm.
Elon Musk, the richest man on paper in the entire world, and he was not satisfied with that. He needed
Yeah.
more. He needed more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now he's inserting himself into our government, trying to get more, into governments around the world trying to get more. And I can't laugh at the irony of him trying to go out and get even more money than he could have ever needed. Now it's tanking the money that he had.
I
So
think this all stems from his botched penis enlargement. I do. I really do. I think it's all related, I mean, guys go out and buy big, muscle cars and big, trucks to overcompensate. And he's trying to tank the economy because he's mad. That's what I
oh,
think.
yeah.
Grimes said it. She confirmed it that's true. So I'm going with her. Baz thinks it's funny anyway. Hi,
I
Baz.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about that. So let's
Yes.
talk about another person who definitely has, let's say, size issues. Let's talk about Donald Trump. And his whole world right now, for me, it's been really interesting watching this continue to fall apart in the sense that he's becoming less and less careful about removing the mask, right? And just letting everybody know exactly who he is. And the truth of it is, I just talked about this on my Substack, my latest Substack today. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hi, please do that. And please subscribe to Desmond if you haven't done that yet either. But what I focused on today, and I'm just going to read a little excerpt from Newsweek, because this really threw me. It was, did Donald Trump skip U.S. soldier memorial for golf dinner with Saudi Arabians, the Saudis who are here for a golf tournament? And the answer is yes. He absolutely did do that. And for me, it's like, wow, he departed the White House for his Doral Resort in Florida on Thursday, dined with leaders of the Live Golf Tour later that evening. That golf tour, I guess, is in a huge public battle with the LGA tour here in the United States. So there's already a lot of tension. And Pete Hegseth went to represent him. I'm sure the families of the fallen soldiers loved that. And they had died during a training exercise in Lithuania. And it's really interesting because I didn't realize that while presidents don't always attend these transfers, they are often present for them. And the Huffington Post reported in September of 2020 that 96 of the dignified transfers that took place from the start of Trump's first term, Trump had only attended 4. So he is nothing if not consistent in his disregard for the people that he claims to care so much about. And for me, this speaks volumes to how much more insulated Trump is becoming because of his wealth and consolidation of power, and how he can really live in this alternate universe. This is like the 9th weekend he's spent in Florida. He's only been at the White House, I think, for 2 weekends since the start of this term. And so for me, what is this saying about power? And what does it say about representation when we have a leader that cares so little for the people that he's supposed to be representing and governing? And it made me feel very angry and just sick to my stomach that he was doing that instead of, really representing us as our best selves. What do you make of where he's at right now? Or is this just like another day in Trump land for you?
I think to a degree, if you are where we're at, when I'm assuming where most of the audience is as well, then we're all pretty much in lockstep that Donald Trump is a terrible human being and should never been elected to the office, once, let alone twice.
Right.
And so hearing the news that Donald Trump decided to skip out on something like this is not going to be, unique to us. We're not going to be surprised by it. You know what? Honestly, what it says to me is that there's like two different categories for what is acceptable in America. There's
Yeah.
what is, and I think while I do not like this person anymore, I do think that once upon a time, Bill Maher actually was able to address this adequately, where he was
Yeah.
saying that Democrats are allowed to get away with certain, or not allowed to get with certain things that Republicans can just get away with. You know,
Yeah.
they're allowed to, you know, constantly talk about how they're the party that loves America, they're the party that loves the military, that they're the party that respects our country, makes us more respected around the world, so on and so forth. But they're also the party that gives a shit the least, you know, excuse my language. You know what I mean? Like they consistently, you know, Trump is, as you said, showed up 4 times out of 96, right?
Yeah.
So he had so many opportunities to show up for these families of people who died for our country, chose not to. And
Right.
how many people have actually heard about this? Right?
Right.
No, I mean,
Right.
a serious question. And it kind of like shows me a couple different things here. One, there is a Republican exceptionalism, like they're allowed to
Mm.
get away with these things. And
Mm.
two, unfortunately, I think it's also an illustration of how much Republican media dominates the media as a whole. Because had a Democratic president done that, everyone
Oh,
would have known about it. And yet we don't seem to know anything about this because Fox News didn't cover it. And so it's not really kind of generating headlines right now.
ooh, can I add to that? Because you just made me think of something. So I guess Fox News has just removed
The Dow
today the
ticker?
yeah, to
Yeah.
your point, it's like they're manipulating the news, they're leaving pieces out, they're not going to
Right.
call attention to things that don't fit this narrative. And
Right.
off camera, you and I, we were talking about what is the purpose of a journalist in this moment in time, and it
Right.
truly is calling out truth to power, no matter who is in power.
Right.
If the Democrats are in power, you and I are looking at that just as critically as when Republicans are in power. And I think
Yeah.
it's really important to be able to differentiate that from propaganda, because if you're just saying how great things are, or if you're not willing to look at things with a critical lens, you're a PR company. You're not a news organization. And I think people
Right.
at this point don't even know the difference.
No, and Fox News has long been a propaganda arm of the
Oh,
Republican
hell
Party.
yeah. I call them faux news personally, but yeah.
Yeah, they're you know, they have themselves listed as an entertainment company, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not surprised by any of this. I think what frustrates me the most is I think the story underneath the story. The
Mm-hmm.
story that a Republican president is able to get away with this because they have so much control over our information cycle in general. You know, it feels
Yes.
like Democrats or people who vote for Democrats are constantly responding to news stories that are being generated by the Republican like mainstream or the right wing propaganda machine. Like
That's
they
right.
put the stories out there, and then the rest of us just respond to them, trying to debunk them, trying to prove how they're lies, so on and so
Mm.
forth. And I just hate this cycle that we are in
Yeah.
because
Me
Donald Trump
too.
should be skewered for this. Donald
Mm-hmm.
Trump should be held accountable for this. He should be. But it feels
Yeah.
like too often, stories like this get swept underneath the rug because the right outlets aren't covering them.
Yeah.
That's what needs to really change. I think we
Mm-hmm.
need to have a more left wing, more independent takeover of the media so that these kind of things can be highlighted better, more consistently, more accurately.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that really like lends itself to a larger conversation around who is dominating media, and whether or not people want to admit it. It
Yeah.
is the right wing on pretty much every platform. I mean, I think Midas podcast finally became like the top podcast,
Yeah.
overcoming Joe Rogan. Okay, that's great. That's one podcast, though. Joe Rogan is part of an entire network of very well established and very well funded media conglomerates that are providing them the resources and the space to really grow in this way. And, it concerns me because, I'm just a independent journalist, right? I'm just a tiny little fish in a very large pond. But if we
Right.
had more little fish all being amplified into actually being paid attention to, like a full school, then you would really be able to see some movement. But it doesn't benefit the powers that be, who own all the media,
Yeah.
for our voices to be amplified, because we're calling for a tear down of these oppressive systems that keep people in poverty and keep people siloed from one another. If you look at the racist and the misogynistic and the xenophobic rhetoric that comes out of the right-wing media, that's very purposeful, because if we're infighting with each other, we're not looking up at the 1%, the ruling class that is literally making all of our lives miserable. And I think that's where we need to be making a shift with how we're taking on these media spaces, is looking at them in terms of who's owning them and who's calling the shots from the top down.
No, absolutely. And I think kind of like going along with how everything is kind of falling apart right now, I wanted to,
Great segue.
yeah,
Let's keep this positive train
about
going.
this. So Whirlpool Corporation announced that they are announcing layoffs in the state of Iowa. It'll be the largest amount of layoffs that we've seen in 2025 so far. Nearly a third of the company's workforce in an Iowa facility will be let go, and that's due to the recent announcement of the tariffs and the market conditions that have plummeted since then.
Yeah.
So we are seeing, I think, the beginnings of all the different impacts that will be coming from Donald Trump's tariff policy. When you hear a story like that, what is your first reaction? Hearing that like Whirlpool Corporation is going to shut down one of their factories in Iowa, lay off a bunch of workforce, and I'm sure it's just the first of many stories like that. Like, what's your reaction to that?
Sure. It's very personal. My mother is from Iowa. And so to hear what's happening to the Midwest, which already is dealing with, population loss. I know Iowa in particular, there are huge issues with drugs, in particular with meth and fentanyl. And to understand that these are people that are already in very economic depressed spaces, and for jobs, some of them the only jobs in a community that could be leaving because of these incredibly dangerous, foolish, and frankly stupid tariff policies that Trump and this regime are putting into place. And we know they're doing it. This is, straight out of the 2025 playbook. They want to crash the economy so they can buy everything very cheaply and basically have total control over all stock and crypto. I mean, this isn't, it breaks my heart, because so many of these communities voted for him, going back to what we said just a moment ago, based off of a lot of fear-mongering, misinformation, xenophobia, racism, and misogyny. And so I don't love to be around I don't love to perpetuate the whole fuck around and find out mentality, right? Because I don't believe that we should be attacking people in that way. I want to call people in, but I want to understand why people continue to support this man at this point. I've said this along so many points. At this point, we're still supporting him. At this point, you're still. So I need to understand, but this is going to really hurt a lot of communities, a lot of people who are already living paycheck to paycheck. And it breaks my heart that it's gotten to this level, all because of really fear of the other, which is really what this comes down to.
I think I come back to this a lot because it truly feels like the nexus point for me. But I believe that, as someone who lives in Montana, I live in a red state. I talk with people who are Republicans all the time. And when I have conversations with people about politics, about the news cycle, about whatever's going on in the world, it seems like the consistent theme that comes up is just how much people are regurgitating things that I know are lies.
Yeah, I know.
I absolutely know they're lies. And but these people believe that they have the truth.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about where people are getting their information from. It's a really central thing that keeps coming up. Where are you getting your information from? Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro. I mean, Fox News, Joe Rogan. Go down Matt Walsh. Maybe the most evil person on the planet. I mean, Charlie Kirk. These are all the top 10 biggest politics podcasts in America. And they're all people just relentlessly spewing disinformation, and there's nothing to stop it. So you have millions and millions and millions of people in this country who are being told the truth from people who are just telling them lies. And so they go out into the country thinking that they know what's going on. And you're asking yourself, how does Trump keep getting reelected? It's well, what are people being told is reality right now? We were talking about in the last administration, Trump's first administration, about like
Mm-hmm.
alternative facts and people
Mm-hmm.
living in two different universes. But that is actually true. We
Oh
are
yeah.
having people living in two different universes. I
Oh
have
yeah.
friends of mine that I know in my life who are Republican,
Mm-hmm.
and I see the things that they post on Facebook,
Mm.
and it is unbelievable to me. And it just goes to show me, I think, the unfortunate power that comes with the bubbles that people are put into in social media after
Mm-hmm.
they're exposed to just a constant barrage of
Yeah.
lies and disinformation.
Well, and I think to your point, people like people like things that reinforce their own worldview.
Yeah,
A lot of the issues that we talk about on the left are nuanced, they're complicated, they're
right.
gray,
Yeah,
right? There isn't just one answer as to why we have such a burgeoning homeless population in the United
right.
States. There's not one answer and there's not one solution to how we solve it. And it's hard for people to understand that and digest that. And people like, we were talking about this earlier, people
Yeah,
like an enemy. They like somebody to hate. And it's a lot easier to say that woman on welfare is the
yeah,
reason my life sucks instead of saying, well, it's those multinational corporations that are creating all the inequities, and here's all the. And I've even found myself going down the rabbit hole of when I'm on Facebook. It's Facebook in particular is challenging to see people, and you see someone, especially with. I'm a big public health person, and you see a lot of misinformation around vaccines, and so I'll see something really blatantly obvious. And I go on to PolitiFact or I go on to Snopes, somewhere that's like easy to pull, debunking myths. Here's information. Here's a link to John Hopkins, and you can send it to them. You can. I've tried this just to see. You post it, and they just literally come back with fake news. You're a liar, and it breaks my heart because it's like the people that didn't vaccinate their child against measles and they died, and they were like, no, we wouldn't vaccinate her if she was still here because she's in a better place. I mean, there's something that has completely disconnected them from reality. And I don't like to throw around the C word a lot, but I think you're seeing a lot of cult like behavior. And if you talk to people who have left cults, they're saying that this is what a cult does. It breaks down people's sense of identity. It creates a new identity where this becomes the thing that they are. I mean,
right,
I'm a progressive person. That's an aspect of myself. That's not who I am, right? But for
right,
these
right.
people, this MAGA identity has become their sense of self. So if you take that from them, what do
Mhm.
they have? And so I welcome thoughts from people watching and from you. I'm not sure how we connect with them again. I don't know how to call them in. I'm trying so many different ways, and I've come to a point where I'm like, I don't know if I can call them in anymore. So my goal now is to get people who didn't vote or who sat this one out but are leaning left or lean independent, and let see if we can get them off the bench and participate in this democracy in whatever way that looks like, because I don't know if there's any hope at this point, and I didn't feel that way 5, 6, 7 years ago as I do now.
It's hard to say because, I think to a degree, human beings are susceptible to, manipulation, to,
Yeah.
to repetition of lies. You get told something enough, you start to believe
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
regardless of what it is. And I think the back in the beginning of when I was doing independent thought, this was like
Mm-hmm.
2020. I remember going and like watching a Trump rally on YouTube. I watched
Yeah.
6 of them because I wanted to do an episode on Donald Trump, and I wanted to feel like I understood what the appeal was because I didn't know what
Yeah.
it was. I really
Yeah.
didn't know what it was.
Same. Mm.
So I wanted to see, like, maybe from a psychological standpoint, who is Donald Trump? What is he trying to do? And
Mm-hmm.
like, how is it having an effect? Like, I just wanted to know. So I put it on. I was also playing Halo at the time because I wanted to be able to shoot something to take my anger out a little bit while listening to him talk on all this stuff. And I came across some really consistent themes about
Mm-hmm.
how he speaks, how he presents information. He
Mm-hmm.
consistently, this man will legitimately lie.
Yeah.
upwards of like 100 times in like 5 minutes. It is like ridiculous the amount of like whiplash you will get from listening. And like he's speaking in front of crowds of thousands of people who are taking
Yeah.
in everything he's saying. And the one thing I
Yeah.
kept coming back to was he consistently will paint himself as like a representation of everyone he's talking to. Like
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
they come after me, they're actually coming after us. The thing I'm doing for you, I'm actually doing for us. So he kind of creates this connection between
Yeah.
himself and the audience. And so it does kind of lean into what you're talking about the identity, right? And so
Yes.
people leave these rallies, these conversations, thinking to themselves that like Donald Trump's agenda is my agenda. Donald
Yeah.
Trump's vision is my vision. Donald Trump's goals are my goals. Like it is next level manipulation. I
Yeah.
don't know how you break someone out of that. You know?
Yeah, and not only that, but it's twofold. It's I'm creating an identity with this person who gets me, and
Yeah.
also we're creating an enemy out of everyone who doesn't get me. So it's not just I identify with you, it's now we hate this other person, this
Yeah.
other
You're either with us
thing.
or you're against us.
Exactly. It's very tribal, and I think that's what makes it very dangerous, because then you can cast a very, very wide net around anyone or anything that doesn't fit your worldview. And if things shift and oh, Donald Trump said he was going to do this, but I guess he's doing this. Well, there's a reason he's doing this. He's really protecting me. He's really looking out for me, because those people, they're the evil ones. And so you can constantly be moving your goalpost, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I mean, the people that are like, I literally posted another video about the tariffs yesterday to my different platforms. Follow me. And and this guy, this middle-aged white guy, I know you're shocked, who was a big MAGA on Facebook, he said,
Yeah.
"Sweetie, let's talk
He
about
said,
this."
"Sweetie."
Of course, sweetie. Oh, Desmond, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Sweetie, let's talk about this in a year. And I'm like, what are you saying? Like, in a year, I'm going to be so thankful that he tanked the economy. Like, there's this sense of Trump has this vision and this secret plan, which is a lot like a cult leader. They have this special information that,
Yeah.
yes, Baz, sweetie is crazy, but they have this special information that the
Yeah.
rest of us aren't privy to. And I think that's also part of the appeal here. They feel a part of something. And I think
Right.
for a lot of people who live in poverty, who perhaps have not had a lot of opportunities or chances at a maybe at a life that they wanted, or who are just bitter about feeling like those people are taking our jobs, that energy, whatever it is, they now feel like they live in a space where they are special.
Right.
And what is funny about that is that's a real snowflake way of looking at the world, just saying, you
It,
know?
yeah. I mean, because we keep asking ourselves those questions like, how could they believe this? How could they endorse this? How could they get behind this?
Yeah.
Like searching for the why, right? Like,
Yeah.
why are so many people in the country enamored with Donald Trump? And so, I guess just to round off my point about all this, like,
Yeah.
I cannot get over just how prevalent and how consistent the attempts are from the right in order to just kind of coalesce all of their messaging around
Yeah.
the us versus them mentality. Like
Mm-hmm.
we get you, they don't. We're
Yep.
fighting for you, they're the enemy. Like you always hear like the term civil war popping up with these people.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
never hear that on the left ever, like
No.
ever. And
No, you're right. You don't.
yeah,
You do.
but
I
like they
mean,
say it all the time.
yeah, they're dying for it. I pun
Yeah,
intended. I mean, it's just one of those things where there's this mythology and
yeah,
almost sacred mysticism around this idea of war, and maybe getting to use the guns that they have in their arsenal. I mean,
yeah,
seriously, I think there's a lot of cosplaying here that happens, and I really think that comes out of being a very privileged, isolated nation for a long time. And
yeah,
that's also, I think, a very, it's like a white person thing too. I really believe that. It's just, there's a sense of privilege and separation that has existed in this country, and they've benefited from it for a very, very, very long time. And now that those um, privileges to them feel like they're being taken, even though they're not,
Yeah.
what's the thing? Civil rights is not pie, right? Like there's like one person, it's not like the
Right.
pie is going to like it's for
Yeah.
everybody. But
There's
I
enough
do
for
think,
everybody.
yeah, like there's
Yeah.
enough for everybody. But I do think there is this sense of displacement in their minds because they've been centered for so long. And I talk a lot about, and I used to talk a lot about this on my radio show, this idea of collective liberation and
Yeah.
decolonizing your mind. And I talked to a lot of people much, much smarter than me on that topic. But I think it's an important conversation that white people are having with each other around how does that interplay into all of this? Because there is a lot going on when it comes to racism in America that we just don't even scratch. And now it's like there's no way of not looking at it, in my opinion, at this point. But we'll see. We'll
There are
see.
plenty of ways to not look at things, Natalie. I mean,
Ain't that the truth?
I have seen particular stories that I could not imagine not looking at, and you
Yes.
be surprised at what people are willing to ignore. So
100%.
I think maybe do you have time for one more thing? Maybe a positive thing?
Let's wrap this up in I think a positive bow. I like that.
Okay. A Data for Progress poll
Mm.
coming out of the state of New York showing AOC at 55% and Chuck
Yes.
Schumer at 36% for the New York Senate race in 2028.
Mm.
This is a 19-point advantage for AOC. This was done just a few days ago, the end of March. 767 likely voters. Standard size for a poll.
Yeah.
You know, I have so many thoughts about where this all goes. All the different
Mm-hmm.
underlying things that come with this. But let me just start off with you first. Like, what are your thoughts about maybe like AOC showing a really strong lead here in the beginning over Chuck
Mm-hmm.
Schumer? Again, she's never said she was going to challenge Chuck Schumer. Let's put that out there.
Right.
But
Right.
a lot of people would like it.
Hypotheticals. Yeah.
Right. What are your thoughts about AOC potentially taking over a Senate seat?
You know, I want all the AOCs and all the Senate seats. I mean, first of all, like
Yeah.
where, I want there not enough AOCs in elected spaces as it is. It's funny because it's funny because I really like her. I really
Yeah.
like her. I think she is a way forward for the Democratic Party. I have a lot of friends that don't like her. They don't think that she could win outside her district. They don't think she could pull off something bigger than the area that she's in. And I have friends on the far left that don't like her because they're like, look, the answer is not going to come from within the system. So it's like it's like no
I have a hard
matter
time with those people.
no, it's true though, but it's like
Yeah.
no matter what, I feel like if AOC looked more like Connor Lamb, I don't think we'd be having the same kind of conversation. I really don't. And so I think we have a huge issue with women in positions of power. So to see her have that kind of a percentage lead in that kind of a poll, one speaks to the unpopularity of Schumer, and two speaks to perhaps a shift in thinking of more women being in positions of power and accepting that. I think we have the most female governors we've ever had at this point in our history. And so I think we have to keep seeing women become powerful in public spaces in order to become more comfortable with the idea of women in powerful positions. I also think she's young and beautiful, and that is a problem for a lot of people. We also want our politicians, especially women, to almost be in these postmenopausal phases of life where they're not really looked at in a certain light. And I think that's another conversation for another time. But I hear that from a lot of people too. What if she wants to have children? What if she decides to get married? How will this impact her? You would never hear this about men, but I hear it all the time when I talk about not only her, but other women that I point to that are in our electorate that I think could make a move. And there's a lot of prejudices right now. So I want to say, yeah, I think that's awesome, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. And I'm going to have to wrap up here in like a minute. I'm sorry, Desmond.
Oh, it's okay. I guess I'll have to save my response for another time then.
No, tell us.
Oh, I can't do it in a minute. I can't do it in a minute.
Well,
So,
I meant I have to wrap up, but like, go ahead.
right. I was having a conversation with somebody just a couple days ago. Someone who I know who is a woman, and she thought that AOC couldn't win. And I don't know. I guess I'm floored by this. Maybe
Yeah.
I look at election data too much, but I I saw Donald Trump, who everyone in this country, to some degree or another, thinks that he is just not a normal thing for the system.
Yeah.
I mean, like some people hate that and some people love that, right? But
Mhm.
like, there's nothing conventional about Donald Trump. There's nothing normal about Donald Trump. The only thing that he really needed to do at the end of the day was win his party's nomination. Because once
Mhm.
he did, everyone kind of like falls into their corner for the general election. You're either going to vote for the Democrat or you're going to vote for the Republican, right? And so I do not understand this idea that like someone, can't win an election. If AOC is able to win the Democratic primary, it's not like all of a sudden all these Democrats are like, oh, well, I can't vote for her in the general election. She
Right.
can't. They're going to vote for her in the general election. The question is, can she win the Democratic primary? And I think that, as you were saying, there's a lot of like internalized misogyny, I think, with a lot of like women. They don't
Oh
see
yeah.
themselves as being able to win some of these positions. And
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of work to undo that over the years. And I think it is kind of like seeing more and more of people in power. I look, I'll say this about AOC from the people who have challenges to her on the left, really. I think that it is kind of like a self-defeating prophecy, or
Yeah.
self-fulfilling prophecy to this extent. The people who are on the far left who think that AOC is not left enough so that they can't vote for her, I just think that's an absolute trash mentality.
Mhm.
I really do. Because if your goal is to get from where you're at to maybe like over here, then any movement in that direction is the right idea. You don't want to move the opposite direction. You don't want to stay where you're at. So maybe she's not exactly where you want to be, but if she's moving closer to where you want to go, then why wouldn't you take that progress? I think there's too many people who are living in really safe blue states who are so insulated from the Republican extremism that a lot of the rest of us have to face that they're like, well, until you're ready to do universal health care and this and this and this and this and this and this, then I don't want you here. It's like, you know what? A lot of people in the rest of the country would really benefit positively from the policies that she might implement in ways that maybe you don't understand because you don't have to deal with that right now because you live in California or in Boston or New York. Like, miss me with all that shit, Natalie. It drives me crazy.
Listen.
There's so many people in my state of Montana who would die to have what people have in Massachusetts or in California, but they can't. They don't have it because they live here and they have to stay here because it's not just easy for people to pick up and move. And so
Yeah.
yes, it would be nice if there was a Democratic president who was a little bit more progressive than Joe Biden. And
Well,
so
we could have
I don't know.
had that, but
We could have. We
we
could have.
chose the orange man instead.
Right.
And
So
on
yeah,
that happy note, everyone.
right. I am so but like this is a really animated conversation for me, so I'll
Oh
just keep
yeah.
it there for today. But I just gotta say that like I cannot stomach the people who need to have the situation be perfect in order for them to get behind it. As long as it's
Yeah.
better, let's get behind it.
Look, purity tests are the things that are going to kill progress on the left. And we need to start building coalitions with people on the left that don't all agree on everything. That's not how this works. The Republicans have figured it out. We need to start figuring it out too. Desmond Price of Independent Thought, my friend, love being with you in all spaces. I hope we can do this again very, very, very soon.
All right, we will. All
All
right.
right.
Thanks to everyone who was checking this out on Substack, to everyone who joined in for a little bit, to everyone who is still here, has been here for the entire time. Thank you so much. We'll be doing this again in the future.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everybody. Bye.